To get started on this part of the exercise, you should have finished up the first part of the exaggerated sandwich exercises. By now, you should have completed doing the chomp part of the animation. And so the next part we're going to have, turning on my cleanup here, is the chewing portion of it. Now you can see on the chewing portion, all it is essentially the same mouth movements of it stretching and squashing as he chews, and he's going to chew multiple times. What we want to be able to do is animate that transition into the chomp, and then the chew, and then have it repeat over and over again. So let's get started. Now the first thing that we want to notice is the timing of all the action in these events. If we go back on our timeline to that last keyframe number 26, where the mouth is taking the first bite and it's squashed out. When we scrub ahead, the first chew where it's squashed, where it goes to a stretched out head, happens at frame 32. So that's a 6-frame span to go from squashed to stretched out. And then the next time it returns to a squash position is in 38, another 6 frames. And then 6 frames more, it stretches out. And then 6 frames more, it squashes back down. So that's the cycle that it's repeating. Every 6 frames, it needs to go from squash to stretch, back to squash, back to stretch. Another way of thinking about this is every 12 frames, it repeats the entire process. So if on frame 26 it's squashed out, I can go 12 frames more to frame 38, and it's exactly the same head position, or at least the same head shape. It may have moved up, but it's doing the same thing. So we need to do this entire animation of squashing and stretching within 12 frames, and then just have those frames repeat over and over again. And that's what we're going to be setting up. So let's go to our timeline and place our cursor right on the 27th frame, the next frame after the final chomp. And I'm going to create a new keyframe. Now with this keyframe, I actually want to create an entirely new symbol of our head. So let's go back up to our rough animation and turn it off. Let's turn on our cleaned up animation and select the head character. To duplicate or to make a copy of this symbol, we're going to control and click on it. Ooh, there we go. And we're going to choose duplicate symbol. It's going to ask us to give it a new name, and I'm going to call this the head chew. So this will be our chewing head, and we'll say OK to that. Now that we've duplicated this one, if we double click on it, you can see this new one is our new symbol that we're going to be working in. And what we want to do is to really animate just one chewing motion of this symbol and have it play over and over again using the existing frames that we have. The second thing we can do is use the setup for our frames. We actually have the frame already in a final chewing position, and we have a setup for our head stretched out or almost stretched out in the starting position. So in between, we can get rid of all of this animation that we've already created. So let's do that. I'm going to click on the second frame and highlight everything to the second to last frame. So notice that I don't have anything in the first column selected, and I don't have anything in this 26th column selected. Everything in between is selected for those. And we'll do Shift F5, and that will delete away all of our frames. And then finally, let's get rid of all of the extra frames that are from here. So I'm going to select the third frame on down on all the different layers and do Shift F5 to erase away those frames too. So now you can see we've got 2 different starting points that we can work in. The last problem that we have is this first column of frames has the face stretched out, and the second frame is where it's stretched and squashed down. We need to reverse the order of all of these. We actually want this one to be the starting point, and if we go up here, we want this to be the ending point for it to return to. So to do this, I'm going to select everything that's in both of the columns, and with everything selected now, I can control click or right click anywhere on this, and we can tell it to reverse the frames. Let me back out and show you this. Reverse frames. This is going to swap up the position of the starting point and the ending point, and now you can see both of those are in the correct order. So with the first starting point, we can select again all of the layers on this first one, and let's add 5 more frames to push all of these over so that it will take 6 frames in the starting point. So I'm going to do F5, 1, 2, 3, 4 more times, and that'll give those 5 frames. Then on the 6th one, that's where it will stretch out. And we need 5 frames for this one, so I'm going to select all the frames in this row. And let's press F5 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times to give us 5 frames within that one as well. Now we can start to set up everything one layer at a time and animate each part of the face to how we want it to be. While I've got all of these frames selected, let's go ahead and stretch out my face and kind of put everything into position. So I've got everything selected, everything is unlocked on all my layers. Grab your distortion tool, free distort, and I'm going to just drag it up, kind of stretch it up. And remember, when you do a squash and stretch, for every amount that you go up, you also want to bring it in equally. In this case, we're only going to do it just a little bit for everything. That should at least put everything nice and in place. Now we can go to our timeline, and I'm going to turn off visibility for everything. Just click on the eyeball, and let's do the nose first. Go into frame number 1. You can see that the nose is going to go from this position to this position. And in this case, it's already set up, so all we need to do is choose frame 1 and create a classic tween in between both of those, and now it will tween itself down to there. As far as the eyes go, let's turn on each individual eye, and you can see there's going to be some unique challenges. First off, it started off with the eyes being in a closed position and then going to an open position. Now, we want to have the eyes stay closed the entire time. So for this, we can go ahead and get rid of the pupils by deleting those 2 away. And also we can get rid of the left and right eye, but we also want to redraw them so that they remain closed and use those in the same spot. So I'm going to go to my right eye and select it. We're going to copy that, Command C, or go to Edit and Copy. Then we can go back up to the 6th frame on the right eye, then go up to Edit, and we're going to paste it in the same spot. So now, when it chews, it'll go from there. But we need to add some squash and stretch to it. So with it selected, I'm going to bring it in just a bit as well. So with that done, let's go to the left eye and select the first frame. We'll go to Edit and Copy, and then go to our 5th or 6th frame, go to Edit, Paste in Place, and then just like we did with the other one, we'll scale that and squish that in as well, just a little bit. Now with both of those done, let's add our transition for the left and right eye. With the first one selected, Control click and do a shape tween. And that should, there we go, swash it in. And do the same thing for the left eye. Shape tween and let it squash in as well. Finally, you can see that we've got our eyebrows moving up and down. So on the eyebrow layer, let's do a shape tween for that and a shape tween for that as well. To test it out, you can see the entire thing will move up and down as they move in, and that's looking pretty good. Now let's do the cheek lines. Turn on visibility for the left and even the right cheek. You can see the starting and stopping point for each one of those as it moves out and inward. And all we have to do is a shape tween for the left and the right cheeks. And that will give us our starting and stopping point for when we do our chewing. Now we are going to change that up just in a little bit, but that'll be a good rough position to see where everything should be at. Next, we're going to skip down to our ears. So let's turn on the left ear and the right ear. You can see the ears are going to be squashed in into an outside position. And since the ears are cymbals, we're going to do a classic tween for both of those. And we can now focus on doing the head by turning it on. So the head's going to go from one position to a squashed position. With it selected, we'll also do a classic tween. Now with the head done, this is where we can also start to tweak some things that are getting off. You can see where our eyes, even though we pasted them in there, they need to be moved in as well. So now that we're on our 6th frame, let's go back up to our left and right eye on those layers. And with our move tool selected, I'm just going to use my arrow keys and nudge them over till they're in a more natural position. That looks good. Do the same thing for the left eye. So with the left eye selected, we'll nudge him over till it gets nice in that position. Now when we test it, that's looking much, much better. Now let's tackle the jaw. With the jaw layer selected, we'll turn on visibility for it, and you can see that it needs to go from a chewed, squashing, to a chewing stretch position. Now, since the jaw is a shape, you could be tempted to do a shape tween between both of these. However, remember, when you do a shape tween, sometimes it gives you results that may not necessarily look very natural. And in this case, I think we can do a better job just doing a frame by frame kind of animation, especially with the transition for the cheeks don't look very, very good in my opinion. I could do the little modifier keys that give the shape hints, but we all know that those are kind of difficult to work with. Much easier, much faster, just to paint off what we need. So let's go into that position. I'm going to remove my shape tween, not use it. And this is where we can turn on our onion skinning to do each of the different frames one at a time. So I'm going to turn on onion skin, go to my first little frame here, and select frame number 2, hit F6. With F6 done, even before I start doing anything, let me lock down all of my other layers just so I don't accidentally paint on the wrong layer. Now we've got just our jaw selected, working on frame 2. I'm going to delete it away. This again is where those little cheek things come in handy, so I know roughly where the outline needs to be. But I also need to see where I'm going. So we're going to be moving downward as we draw these off. For this, I'm going to grab my regular paintbrush tool. This is the one without the little squirrely-do. We'll go to our properties, make sure black is set to your fill color, and you're still working on a 5 for your outline. And then very carefully we'll start where the part of the jaw is and draw it, starting to come down. And then coming inward this way and connecting up right where the nose is for that one. With that done, we can grab our fill bucket tool, go to our fill color, click on our skin color, and then one click fill it in. Oops, I guess it would help to actually select the skin color. There we go. And filled it in. So that looking good for that one. Go back up to our timeline, select the jaw, hit F6 and create a new one. Then delete away the drawing that's there. Grab your regular paintbrush. Make sure that paintbrush has black as your fill color. Let's draw the next frame in. I'll drag my onion skin so I can see it. So again, we'll start off roughly at the same starting point, coming inward where that cheek is. Then again, moving down into a stretched out position. And back around, following that line to there. That looks good. Grab my paint bucket tool, set my fill color to be the skin color, and then fill it in. Going back up, choose the next keyframe, hit F6. With that keyframe selected, we're going to delete away what we've drawn. Do the next keyframe to match up. In this case, grab my paintbrush tool, there it is. Set my fill color to be black. And then paint in this jaw. Again, wrapping around. Getting really stretched out. Let's see, I think I can do a better job. Let's start over. Around and down. Oops. Back up. And with it connected, we'll get our paint bucket tool, set my fill color to be skin tone, fill that in, and let's do the final in between. So with this frame selected, 5th frame, hit F6, delete away what you got, grab your paintbrush tool, set your fill color to be black one more time, and then let's paint somewhere between that one and this one. Again, I'm going to keep it it's almost there anyway. And set it to there. Finally, grab my fill bucket tool, set my fill color to be the skin color. One click and we've got it. Let's turn off our onion skin and see it transition. Much better. Now it's looking like a chew that looks more natural. With that done, we need to focus on the patch layer. So I'm going to turn on visibility for my patch. Make sure to unlock that visibility. Now for the patch layer, because it is a shape, if we do a shape tween on that layer, here's what it will look like. And you can see there's a couple of frames where we can still see the line that I drew. So it's still not going to be 100% perfect to just do a shape tween. But with that as a starting point, we can go in, let's go frame by frame and see if we can clean it up. So I'm selected the first frame here. That one actually looks good. I'm going to go to my next frame. That's where you can see it starts to get off by a little bit. So I'm going to hit F6 and create a keyframe on it here. And with it selected, grab my transform tool. I'm just going to bring it up till it covers up that. Now, quickly, it filled it in. Go into the next one. Looking pretty good. It's actually off by a little bit, so let's go to another keyframe for this one, at least in my case. F6. I'm going to bring it up even more. Again, covers it up well. Next keyframe. Haha, still covering up just a little bit there, so let's do another keyframe. And all I'm doing is using that rectangle to cover up that line. Next keyframe, it's actually looking pretty good. And then finally it's in the right position for there. So with our patch, you could do a shape tween depending on how you drew it, or you could do that as a frame by frame animation. But that allows it to look really, really good and smooth, like it's one solid line for that. The final thing we can focus on is the chewing for the mouth. And I promise this time it's going to be a little bit easier. Now, if we turn on visibility for the mouth, and I'm going to unlock the layer as well, you'll notice that on the stretched out position, it still goes all the way to the edge of the face. What we want is when he chews in this way, for it to also be shifted inward and be a little bit more narrower. So like he's really stretching out his jaw and pulling in his cheeks for this one. And then the initial chew, it's going to stretch out. So it's going to go from really stretched out to squashed in to stretched out. However, if we were to do a shape tween for this it's going to look something like this. And obviously that's not what we want it to look for. So a shape tween is not going to work for this particular drawing. However, we can make it work. The reason why the shape tween didn't work for the painting of the mouth is because when we painted it, we used the regular brush tool. And if you remember, that tool allows you to fill in colors. If we were to draw the mouth with a line, it should be easier to do a shape tween for that kind of position. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to choose the line tool. With that line tool selected, let's go over to our properties. Make sure your black stroke color is selected. Object drawing mode needs to be turned on, and your stroke width needs to be set at 5. Now with object mode turned on, if you need to test it, make sure when you make a line that when you select that line, you've got the blue bounding box around it. If you don't see the blue bounding box, then you don't have it turned to the on position. With that done, I'm going to go to my first frame, and very, very carefully, I'm going to paint over that original position for the mouth. Now if it's off by a little bit, it's okay, but just take it real slow and carefully draw exactly on top of it. Now we've got a line that's going to cover up that. With that done, choose your move tool. Let's move the line out of the way. We'll click on it. There we go. Just make sure the whole line is selected. And now we can select our original mouth and hit delete and delete it away. So that new line that we drew, we moved it out of the way and we deleted our original. Now let's choose our new line and put it back to where it was. With that done, and it's still selected, I'm going to control or right click. Let's copy that line. Then we'll jump back up to our timeline and select this 6th frame. And let's get rid of this line. So delete that away. And I'm going to control or right click, and we're going to paste it right in the same spot. And now we can drag it downward. I'm going to use my arrow keys and nudge it. Grab my transform tool and let's bring this one in. Again, use my arrow keys to nudge it into place. Maybe bring this down a little bit more. Okay, so now that we have a line that's drawn and not just a fill color for both the starting and stopping point, let's go up to our mouth, back to frame 1, and let's do a shape tween for it. See if it'll play nicely now. Much better. So now you can see he's really chewing and it works out really, really good. The final thing that we're going to add are the cheeks. I want the cheeks to really pucker and change their shape as it comes in too. So the starting position is okay for the cheeks, but as it comes in, I want that ending position to be something that's a little bit larger and closer in for here. So let's go to our timeline, and I'm going to turn on visibility for my right cheek and unlock it. So working on just that right cheek. Let's go back to the first keyframe for it. If we zoom in so I can see what we're working with, you can see here's our right cheek, and just like the mouth, it was drawn using a filled in paintbrush. So with it selected, I'm going to delete it away, and I'm going to use our regular paintbrush tool. This is the one with the squiggly do. Again, go into our properties. My stroke color is black. Object mode is turned on, 5-point stroke. The only thing I'm going to change is the width profile. I'm going to let that profile be that tapered profile number 1. With that selected, I'm going to paint in, going from the top, just kind of this little crescent moon on that side, right at the end of wherever your mouth is ending. Now if your mouth is in a different position, just make sure it's at the edge of that cheek. With that done, let's go back up to our timeline, go to the final frame. This will be frame number 6. Let's go back to the ending point. You can see for this one, we need to get rid of that. So with that frame selected, delete away. This time, with our paintbrush tool, instead of doing a small crescent that goes one way, I'm going to do a big crescent starting at the top and going down this way. So you can see how that looks like the cheeks are really full on this edge. Now, since my timeline still has that shape tween, let's see how it tweens out. Pretty good. Let's zoom out so I can actually see it. So it's moving from this one and actually looks like it's chewing and following along with the mouth really, really well. So I'm satisfied with that. Let's do the same thing for the left cheek. I'm going to lock down that one and unlock this one. Go to the left cheek's first frame. And again, you may have to zoom in on it because it's really, really small. We can delete it away. And then with our paintbrush tool, we can click and drag and do a small crescent going this way. With that done, go to the 6th keyframe, the final keyframe on the left cheek. Let's go in. You can see we need to delete that away. And just like we did this one, we want it to curve really big going this way. And there's that. Now let's test it out. Pretty good. We'll back out so see the whole thing. So now as he chews, his eyebrows are moving, his cheeks are moving, every part of his face is going back and forth to that first position. This looks really good going for one way. Now we need to reverse it and have it chew back out the other way. That's what we're going to do for the next video in this exercise. So save where you're at and jump to the next video to pick up and finish out this exercise.